Welcome to a special episode of Issues to Impact, brought to you by the I Have Something to Say podcast team. This is where your hosts, Dr. Shalonda Simmons-Emanuel, Chris Majocha, and Samí Haiman-Marrero serve as a sounding board to tackle recurring issues, provide actionable solutions, and build a supportive community for changemakers that want to make a positive impact on society. By leveraging our collective expertise in business consulting, content creation, leadership development, and marketing, we empower founders, professionals, and leaders to face their challenges by sharing how we have overcome these very same obstacles ourselves. We're not here to just talk. We're here to drive real change by helping leaders address the issues holding them back from making an impact. Together, we can make a difference, tackling one issue at a time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to I Have Something to Say. Chris and I are very excited to have as our guest Priscilla Guasso. This has been an open invitation that's taken a minute to actually coordinate because Priscilla's been very busy having a baby and getting adjusted to motherhood. But we're so lucky to have you here now. I just want to do a quick introduction. I mean, you're an HR leader, right? With close to 2 decades of experience working with people, right? Across different industries. You're also a business owner with Manifesting Leadership Group, where you empower leaders that are driven to figure out and help them discover what the next thing is, right? That they're going to be focusing on and pursuing. And then also you're the founder of Latinas Rising Up in Human Resources in HR. And so what else do you do? Priscilla, now you understand, right? That being la mami de tu beba is numero uno now, right? And I know that, but thank you for, creating these platforms and these opportunities to really pour into people, what you've learned throughout your career. And so just wanted to welcome you on behalf of Chris and I. How are you?
Oh, I am just so honored to be here with both of you. I know it's taken a minute, and usually it's because we're so busy, but I'm like, no, really, I've had a little one that's a CEO, very different running my household, and she is teaching me new skill sets. I'm thrilled to be here.
That's great. And so you've authored, many papers, books, participated in anthologies. I think we shared some space together in a couple of them too. But I really wanted to focus on this little gem right here.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like a book/workbook called Community, right? And it's anchored on this word, community. And it's like in your, from what it says at the beginning, everybody talks about networking, and you like to talk about communitying, creating community. And so that
word
community, right. And so I think it's really great because it's like a practical, just workbook, really, because you go through it and it gives you these exercises. So you really think about who's around you, who do you rely on, and also, more importantly, who do you need in your life, right, to make you grow? And so anyway, so how did this come about?
It's been quite a journey that I've been on, as you've mentioned, and it started many, many years ago. But as I've progressed into like this new Priscilla, and I say this new Priscilla because this new Priscilla keeps evolving, I feel like every 5 to 10 years. And now she's a mom, and before she's a corporate exec, and before that she was figuring life out, where she was going to go next. But as I've gone through my journey, and a lot has happened through my writing journey, actually, as I've been writing more and more and meeting a lot more men and women inside and outside of my community, I've learned that the pillar, the foundation of what has launched me into what I consider success, which is true connections. It's not all the accolades and all of that. It's making impact, has been because of community. And when I grew up, all I kept hearing was networking, and it drove me nuts because I'm like, networking, oh my gosh, that sounds horrible. I have to go into a room of people I don't know, and I have to make connections in the spot. And I'm a talker. I can talk to folks. I wasn't always like that though, which is why it scared me. But later did I realize, as I started reflecting, I go, no, once I do make that connection, like, you're not just my network, you're a close connection now. Mm-hmm. And I hope that's not just all business down the road, right? That's where I've made my true connections. And I've learned to rephrase it and say, no, it's community. It's not networking anymore for me, because networking, it's like a transactional. It feels very like, do this, but community, it's like, no, I'm here for you. You're here for me, for like the good, bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. I love that.
I am 100% on board with that, and I'm very big on community, and I love community building initiatives and just learning about it in general. When you talk to other business owners or just people out in the business community, and you talk about community over networking, what is the reaction that you get?
Sometimes I get it, but it depends on the leader, right? And sometimes they're like, I've not thought of it that way. And for the younger folks that come in, they're like, oh my gosh, I feel like you took off the pressure of what I'm walking into the room of. And when I speak to, regardless of who you are, a lot of times it's like, you just don't know who you're going to walk into and run into, and how, like, even what you and me, Samí, when we were talking off camera, of we have connections that we didn't even realize, of people that are really core and close to us. And it just makes me feel that my family and my community has gotten so much stronger and wider and deeper. And so, to your question, Chris, it takes a little bit at first, because in corporate it's so tit for tat, like, you know, here's the money, do this for me, and I got to get this done, and I have this initiative, we got to get there, right? But then when we start talking, they're like, no, you're right. Actually, when I think about how I've had to succeed in my corporate life, has relied a lot on what happens at home too, right? And then vice versa. So community, you can see it in a lot of different aspects. And then also how you give back to community as well. So conversations get a lot deeper than, tell me what you do for a living.
Yes. And that's actually how you kick it off, right? So the question that you present as an alternative is, what inspires you every day? I was like, how brilliant is that, right? Well, yeah, how do you see people reacting differently, right? From the, what do you do for a living, versus the, what, you know, inspires you every day, or what are you working on that inspires you?
I think a lot has changed, even from when I wrote the book, right, to now. Now, when I step out of my house, or I go somewhere, I do something like this, or I'm networking and finding new community members to join me, I've realized it's got to be worth both our time. Time is so precious. It's not even just, oh, I have an hour, let's do it. No, it's time away from doing something that you love or you want to be with, right? In my case, it's my family and my daughter. I love being with her 24/7, but at the same time, I do need a break, right? I think we all do with our kids. But is it benefiting others, right? Is it benefiting those that you're around? And so that's the thing where I've realized a lot of the times we have the power to change those conversations, but we've been so programmed to, when you walk into a room, shake a hand, be confident, and ask, what do you do? What's your job? And it's natural. It happens. And I've been there. I still do it at times where I'm like, Priscilla, go back to your questions, because you're dying in this conversation right now. I'm like, I don't know what you're doing in tech. It's way above my head. And so when I ask the question, what inspires you, what motivates you, what helps really change your day when you wake up in the morning, what crazy habits do you have? You learn so much more about the person. And then I realized, do I want to keep talking? Like, do we have a genuine connection?
Yeah.
That I want to keep this person around, or is this just transactional, right? And I'll still be kind, right? But you do get deeper and realize, again, that you do get a lot of a pause from people, because they're used to those other questions, right? Yeah. But you realize they become a lot deeper. The conversations just resonate a lot more. And then you end up, all of a sudden, 15, 20 minutes goes by and you're like, wait, we're still talking.
Isn't that kind of like, I mean, I guess just it's sort of like twofold, because with those kind of questions, not only are you engaging in a more interesting conversation right there on the spot and like that short term, But long term, when you are asking somebody more about what they're passionate about and what they want to do, not just what they do now, I think to your point, that is where you kind of start building those community connections, those longer term connections, because somebody that you meet at a networking event today might be in a totally different role when you run into them 3 years from now, or you could even just know that somebody's looking for a certain candidate or somebody with a specific skill set, and it might not be what that person did, as their professional job, but they say, well, I'm really passionate about doing this on the side and I want to do more of that. And you're like, hey, here's an opportunity to open that door for them. I just think that's kind of cool that it gives sort of that both that, that entertaining conversation. Like you said, 20 minutes later, you realize you're still talking, but also I think builds a much stronger connection than that professional, surface level area. I mean, have you ever, I guess with those kind of questions, do you have people that you've connected with that are no longer in those professions that when you first met them?
Oh, 100%. We have a culture here in the States, right, where a lot of our identity is tied to our job, right? Absolutely. and our title more than anything.
Yes.
And we learned through the pandemic, and some of us had a pandemic before the pandemic. I'm raising my hand. where things get taken away from you, right? You lose your job, you get laid off. Maybe business is not going the way you wish it were. Things happen, and you lose your identity. We've all been there, right? Whether we admit it or not, it's happened to us. So when that happened to me, I realized when I spend time with others and I'm walking into rooms, I truly want to bring, and it's hard because, we've got a lot going on in our brains. But when I walk in, I want to make 3 genuine connections, right? Because again, some folks are just there to network, right? The old school way of networking. I go, no, I want to make 3 genuine connections. And what can I do to better support them if it connects with what I'm doing, or if it's someone I know, or how I can better branch to your point where they're at. Because you're right, Chris, there's been times where I've met certain individuals and they were at the top of their game. And then later they're calling me and they're going, Priscilla, I just got my letter of getting laid off. What do I do? What do I look at? I have no idea. And I go, oh my gosh, you remember that I can help you. And I told you I'm here to help. But again, the connection was genuine, right? And I support them through one of their hardest times because that's my background, right? And it's not something many people talk about really. So yes, there's been time, or even conversations go really deep sometimes. Mm-hmm. My personal journey, we've been having my daughter, I talk a lot about just fertility and IVF and family planning and miscarriages. It's tough. I've been through it, and it's probably one of the darkest, hardest moments I've personally had. But as I've opened up in these conversations, folks will share like, "Oh yeah, I had my daughter," and they'll mention it really quickly, like, "Oh yeah, through IVF," and I go, "What?" And I go, "Actually, let me share my." And then you're like, you make a whole different connection where you're like, maybe your family needs to meet my family. Again, we understand each other's journeys, right? Or there's maybe something lighter, right? Where I love spending time working at the church or doing things in my own backyard community with kids and students and building their professional development or just helping them in life, right? And it goes, actually, I might know someone that, you just start playing, connect the dots with their lives and your lives and the people you know. And that for me is where I feel like it's so special, and why community is so special, because people remember that. You remember it too. And then again, you just don't know how down the road they might be able to support you and do that for you, which has been really neat when that happens. Like today, like even being here on this podcast with you all. So it's beautiful, especially, and I share that because I went through a really tough time with my daughter and was like, I don't know. And then this podcast invitation came from both of you, and it was perfect. It's divine timing, because I was ready. I just didn't know where I was going, and it just, here we are. And so again, power of community, right? So
yes,
so many ways.
Totally. It's really interesting because I had never made that connection between the word common things, right? Like the things that are common between, or in common. I stand corrected, right? In common between us is what helps us build community. The definitions at the beginning I'm telling you, I felt like fell in love with this little book, right?
Thank you.
Because it's so short and but to the point and very practical, and it really made me just ponder on that. Yes, you build community with people that you have things in common with. That's where the word community kind of comes from, right? So my question to you is, though, is it possible to always find something in common with others? Can we build community with everybody, in your opinion?
Like everything, it's a two-way street. And I think I think yes. However, the caveat is where the mind spaces of the two individuals at that time coming together.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, if I'm going through a hard time, let's say at work, and then I have someone coming in and they're at the top of their game, it's tough because you're just in two different headspaces, right? And you can find the commonality, but the emotion, right, is there too. And so it's tough because, I mean, we're human, right? At the end of the day, we're human too. And not to say that you're jealous or you're envious. It's just our heads are in a different place. But it takes time, and I truly think there has to be a need from both sides, right?
Yeah.
And it's like any relationship. If only one side's winning and it's so toppled over, is good luck.
I agree with you. I was just asking because I will confess that I can't build community with all people. Chris knows. For me, there has to be value alignment, right? On very specific things, and we won't get into it right here.
Yeah.
But it's very tough. I agree with you, right? Because it's all about mindset. It's about, heart, your heart, where your heart is. And then also that gut doesn't lie, right? And so then, just knowing who to bond with, right? And become more intimate with, in terms of, telling them your whole life story, or, sharing your ideas and that kind of thing. It could be challenging until you find that common ground and that you can trust that person to bring them into your community, right?
And it's tough because there's been times where I thought someone was going to be part of my community, where I was like, oh, we're killing it together, right? And you think everything, and you may have the same values and you may have the same alignment, but again, you're each going through different things in life, and it's just not the right timing or moment. And sometimes you have to say, well, maybe not today, right? Or maybe not never. and that's okay too. Some people, like I mentioned in the book, there's different people for different times and for what you need, right? And some people will come in, and even those that have come into my life and have left, they've left a mark, and I hope that I had made a mark too. But we just weren't meant to be in that forever, right? We weren't meant to sail forever. And that's okay as well. I think sometimes we may hold on to that a little too tight, but hi, Sammy and Chris. Since before the pandemic, and it heightened after the pandemic, the whole feeling of loneliness and the darkness that came with being home all the time. And then technology doesn't help either, where there's certain things it does really well with, and then social media really is not doing great things for our youth, right? And even for us as adults, where I see things that I'm like, man, I'm so behind the ball on all these things. Or you have marketers that are like, make 50K by doing X, Y, and I'm like, oh, what? But all to say, right, is that it takes time, and I really wanted to build this book because I felt that we were losing what it meant to have community, at least in my eyes and what I have seen. I was like, I'm not going to solve the world's problems today. Never will I be able to. But in my niche of where I'm at and those that I touch, this is where I want to leave my mark of I couldn't be where I am at today and continue to achieve what I'm doing at home, at work, in life, if it weren't for the people around me. But it took, and this is where I didn't really focus so much onto it as I am now, laser focused, where it just kind of happened. I was following my gut. It was happening. And then you find pockets where you're like, oh, that was the wrong person. Oh, I shouldn't have said that to them. And it's like, I should have followed my gut. And it's because I did not sit down and make my plan. Just like we strategize in our life. People are, Priscilla, you might be a little crazy. And I go, yes, I am. But I sit down and I strategize of like, what can I do for those that are these specific people I want around me this year?
Mm-hmm.
And this is why. And this is what I want to do for them. And then this is my plan for this next year. What skills am I missing and who can help me get there? And I'm very transparent about it. It's not like I need this and you do this. It's really like, hey, but because I've built community genuinely over the years, I'm very fortunate to have people raise their hands, like, Priscilla, call me whenever you need to. Just llámame, call me. I'm here for you from all communities, meaning like you name it. I mean, when I say community, I mean any kind of community, and that's the beauty of it, right? Where it's not just culture and language, it's experiences and life. It's just, there's so much there. And so that for me, I've realized, like even being a mom, I was like, I didn't realize I needed a mom community. I do, because I tell my single friends that don't have kids and they're like, I don't understand what you're saying, or that have older kids and they're like, Priscilla, I've already been past that newborn phase. I don't want to go back to it. I'm like, oh, but I'm in it. I need to vent. I'm in it. So again, based on your space in life, right? Based on where you are, it's so important to ensure you have the right, just the right people around you for that.
Yeah.
And Priscilla, you touched on something I think really important there, which was like when you said you run into people that maybe weren't the right person that you thought they might be, and it was because you didn't take the time to sit down to like assess that and feel it out. I think one of the biggest parts of building the community that you want to be part of is, as you mentioned, it is that self like introspection and reflection to realize what kind of people and situations and values you are willing to tolerate or not tolerate. And from there, then it's you kind of will naturally attract and detract the people that aren't in line with that. I think I mentioned it before on this podcast, not this episode, but other episodes, where one of the best pieces of business advice I ever got was I went to a successful entrepreneur and I said, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur. Like, I want to do something great. I don't know what to do though. And he's like, well, if you don't know what to do, focus on who you want to be first. What would you want to be known for? What kinds of people would you want to be around you? And like, what would you feel proud of, to be doing, and then work backwards from there to figure out what profession would take you there. But I just think it's interesting that you have to start with yourself first, until your cup runneth over, before you can bring in other people. And one other thing that you mentioned that I just wanted to touch on real quick of, people that come in and go. I've heard it as, people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Yeah. And so there's different levels of community, but, some people are there just to teach you a lesson, maybe even just to be the lesson of, I definitely don't want to be around other people like that. Other people are, the seasons, they're there for a time, and good or bad, they come and go. And other people are the lifetime people, and those are the ones that are your ride or dies, your true friends. But I just think we're talking about can you build community with anybody? In my experience, I feel like you can find common grounds with anybody, as long as you're willing to as long as both parties are willing to open up. All right, perfect example, and I'll throw this out there. I am not a big DeSantis fan in Florida. I was in Florida, but he did a campaign called Project Opioid, and I ended up helping out on that campaign because I believed in that cause specifically. But I did not support anything else that happened. So,
let me be clear.
Exactly.
I love it, Chris. But it's true. We are so multi-layered as people, right? Yeah. And so I feel like you're going to find something, but as Samí, as you mentioned, your values, right, is what's going to be like, well, I can look at that and not this, right? Yeah. And it's true, but it like you said, and I actually mentioned in the book, and I saw you bring it up, Samí, is there's a part in there.
This was a kicker for me.
Yeah, tell
Because
me.
we were talking about the people, then how do you build that community?
Mhm.
And then when I read this part about building your community, that's the title of the section. It says that you identify these people and then they're all, I feel, anchored in communication, right? I feel like building communities anchored in communication, right? And connecting through communication. And so it says here, the creative brainstormer and dreamer, right? And I started laughing because I'm like, yeah, those are the people that you want around you that won't judge you when you have these audacious, crazy ideas, right? And they're like, yeah, let's go, right? Like Chris is one of
I love
my
it.
buddies, right? Then there's the challenger. Yeah, I mean, if you could explain, then the thinkers, the motivators, and if I went through this whole section, I'm like, oh my God, that's this person, the decision maker. That's my sister, right?
Mhm.
Like that. That's it. It's like I call my sister, right?
Mhm.
And I say, what do you think, right? The mentor, the listener, the connector, the strategist, and coach. Right, we were talking before we came on to the recording, right? How I was confessing, right, that I suck in managing people. I'm a good leader, but I can't manage people. Anyway, so I'm getting mentored and coaching on that, right? Your advisor, your sponsor.
Mhm.
I mean, this is fascinating how you've, you know, and with very brief descriptions. It wasn't like these long, drawn out explanations, but each one I was like, yes, this is so and so. Yes, this is so and so, right? And they change. You encourage us
Yeah.
to always revisit because of the stages in our lives, right? Because they might need some tweaking, not because the people that have been part of your community are no longer valuable or they don't fulfill that role, is because you're hopefully expanding, right, your community, and there are new people coming in. Now, have you experienced, because I've experienced this, right? And how is the best way to manage when you're expanding your community and making sure that those that are already part of the community and love you and want the best for you and they're in your corner, right, don't get offended or feeling like they're being
So,
displaced?
yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, again, I don't have all the answers. I can just share what I've done, right? And
Yeah.
what I've seen. And for me, there's so much power in using your voice to tell people how you feel about them. I think sometimes we wait too late to let people know what they mean to us. Because again, we get caught up in all the stuff we're doing, right? And I like for instance this past year I go I am going to be up to my eyeballs in diapers and baby and like a whole different life, right? When everyone was used to me jumping on camera and facilitating and doing connections and I said to the ladies close to me from my books, I said, I'm going to be a little crazy this next year. I'm going to need you guys to just bear with me until I get my bearings. But just know I am a text away. I mean, I answer it the same day. Like I would answer almost immediately. I go, there's going to be like a 24-hour, 48-hour delay nowadays. But know that you're important to me. And I did that with my family too. And then I also went down to who are the 5 people that I'm going to keep close to me because I need this right now. As a woman, as a mom, as a business owner, I can only stretch myself so far. And everyone warned me about it too. So I was like, I'm listening. If you have advice, I'm listening to it and finding what's mine, right? What works. But for me, what worked was telling those 5 really close friends of mine, you matter so much to me, but I have no capacity right now to just be your strength like I used to be. And I have to be honest because I've got a human I'm bringing in. And everyone, luckily those individuals that love you and are there for you, they understand. But I think sometimes we let time go and we don't talk about it. And there's so much power in saying, and when I said that to those ladies in my family, they were just like, I didn't realize how valuable our relationship was to you. And I go, yeah, you mean the world to me. I just don't want you to think you're getting lost in what I'm doing. I'm just in a different phase in life right now.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've been on the tail end where I've been the one that's been pushed away, and I'm going, I'm here for you. I know you're drowning. I'm here for you. But again, we all manage things differently. And I've learned, because I've also lost friendships and connections and community members because I also didn't communicate too, right? And so you learn and you grow, but I'm learning more and more, like, if we just use our mouth and just say like what we mean and what we feel and what we think, it goes a long way. It goes a long way. So that for me has been very helpful. But it also took time for me to understand that, me saying that out loud and being direct with friends and family and community members, it's not a bad thing. It's not that I'm weak and I can't handle it. Because that was the other part. It was my own craziness in my head of like, bro, you got to keep it together, and whatever, nothing's gonna fall through the cracks. And then before motherhood, like, things were a whole different. You're just like, ah. So I'm learning. I'm still growing. I don't have it all figured out, but I feel very content in the space I'm in today. That I just hope others would take, even if that's a little bit. Focus on you, right? We mentioned that earlier. Be very self-aware, and I've done a lot on that on myself. I am constantly, and I actually shared the Wheel of Life in there. That's very helpful. It's very simple, but very helpful, because again, we change and we evolve. Our priorities change every year. If you would have told me last year how much I'd be doing at home and being at home and taking care of my home and my husband, I've been like, you're crazy. This is not my life. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to keep my husband. I want to keep my family together. I want to have my business, but so I've got to figure this out with him, right? And it's possible, but if we think it's just going to happen, it's going to be hard. You can do it, but it's going to be hard. If you take some time to sit down and really strategize and bring people in with you so that you're not doing it by yourself, it's still hard, but it just feels a lot easier. You're not alone.
Well, kudos to you, honestly, for having those conversations with your friends. I mean, I'm a dad of a just turned 3-year-old, and yeah, it is like you said, at the beginning of this podcast, it changes your identity. Like you can lose yourself. I had a meeting with somebody the other day, and they're like, so what do you like to do for fun? And I literally like paused, and he's like, oh yeah, that's right, you have a 3-year-old. And I was like, yeah, I haven't thought of that question in a very long time, but but honestly, I think with any relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship or friendship, a professional relationship, not everybody or every relationship is going to be 100% all the time. And sometimes, everybody's like, oh, it's 50-50, but that's never how it works. One day you could be 20 and the other person has to be 80, and vice versa. And then when those conversations really need to happen is when like both parties are not equaling up to 100%. So both people are 20-20, and then it's like, okay, let's sit down and figure this out. Exactly. But there's comfort in figuring that out together. And like you said, your friends didn't realize maybe even how much they meant to you. And I think just opening that up and having that conversation, letting somebody realize that, just kind of continues to chip away at those walls that we all build up when we are in relationships, because we are afraid of somebody backstabbing us or falling out. But really, when you lean into it and you lean into love, into honesty, into just your truth of saying, hey, this, I can't be 100% right now, but I still need you there. I think to your point, that is a part of, I think, society of life that we have kind of lost, even before COVID. I've always said that, I think when I was growing up before the internet and everything like that, it was, you kind of were held accountable to your geographical communities, and that if you acted out or did something crazy, everybody was going to know about it, and people that you respected were going to know about it. And now a lot of times our communities are online, and they're behind computers and over phone lines, and you can do something crazy and nobody in your local community is going to know about it, so you're not really held accountable anymore. And I think we've lost a lot of that. But I mean, a lot of it is just having those conversations, and to your point too, the loneliness aspect of it. And if you don't have those conversations, you can really end up in a lonely place. So I just want to say, yeah, kudos to you for letting those 5 friends know, what they meant to you, and for also realizing that you didn't have necessarily the bandwidth for more than those 5 friends at this time in your life.
Yeah, they were like, I'm lucky to be on that list. I'm like, no, girl, I'm going to be calling you. You're like crazy, Priscilla. You thought I had it together until you became my 911 phone call. But no, Chris, you're right. It's tough. It is tough. And I think a lot of where this wisdom came, because it's not from me, promise you. I've learned it. And from others that are much wiser than me, that you can do life alone, but it's just so lonely, and it's not. I want to believe that we were created to make connections. And when I say that, I'm thinking of both our introverted and extroverted brothers and sisters out there, because whether you're introvert, you still need connection. It just looks different. And it may not be quantity, right? It's all about, for me, it's quality now. Before it was quantity. Oh, I got to meet everybody and connect with her. And it's exhausting. And now I go, no, it's quality. I'm taking time away, and I want it to be genuine and true. And I'm now more focused on my legacy about my daughter, right? And what we're doing and what I'm doing and how I'm inching towards making the world a better place so she can be a better human than what I am. And the humans we see out there, that I'm like, oh my gosh, what's happening with this world? My human needs to be better. She will be better with heart, right? Heart and love and emotion and change. But yeah, it does come back to doing the work. And you mentioned something earlier about like people coming into our life for a reason, a season, and what they do for us. And I would add one more thing to what you mentioned is sometimes it's not so much what they're doing for you or to you, but maybe you're meant to just be a seed. Maybe you're meant to just plant a seed. And so, like, for those folks that have come in and out of my life where I'm like, oh, I missed you, right? It wasn't meant to be at that time. Because my father calls it the 10 steps of letting go by Priscilla's way. Because he's like, you just love to hold on to people. I'm like, I know, I give them benefit of the doubt. But he and others have shared with me, sometimes just certain things you're doing or saying or like you're meant to just be that little spark for them or a little seed for them for wherever their path is at that time. And again, there wasn't the alignment, but maybe you're meant to just drop one piece of knowledge that they're sitting on. It's funny because I've actually had folks in my life from my past, maybe 20, actually I had somebody from 20 years ago from college, and she reached out to me and goes, it was maybe 10 years later, she reached out to me on LinkedIn of all places. I was like, what is this? And she goes, I just want to let you know, you were such a good friend, and I'm so sorry that we separated ways. But you really held the space for me at that time. I just wasn't in a good place, but I'm so proud of you and just want to let you know that. And I was like, what? And I share that because, again, it's not for me. It's more of the impact we each can make. Mm-hmm. And people notice it. And again, you just never know if you were meant to be that light for somebody else in that dark moment. Just like many people have been that for me during my dark times.
That's great. That's wonderful. And that's the power of community. Mm-hmm. It's just that it can be in all those shapes and forms, right? Mm-hmm. And we've all had that sensation of, wow, you've got that friend or those cousins, right? That you haven't spoken to in months. And all of a sudden you pick up the phone and it's like time didn't even pass. And so that's what community looks like too, right? It doesn't have to be like a constant thing. Mm-hmm. And you just mentioned about planting the seed, and that just happened to me recently, that I had to have a very candid conversation with someone that we met and we fell in love with each other, last year, and we were very intentional in trying to work on a project together. And we started kicking it off. We kicked it off earlier this year, and it's really a project that I had started developing back in 2020. And so I pulled it out of the vault, right? And I was like, oh my God, maybe this is the thing we should be working on. And so we were very gung-ho, but it wasn't working out for me as quickly or as smoothly, right? The love and the intent and the it was all good. It's just I wasn't, my gut was telling me that it was
Something's off.
not it was something was off. And so I had to have the direct conversation, right? And say, let me just start by saying that I love you, right? And it was so, and that this is painful. Like this conversation right now is so painful for me, but I have to say it because it's not fair, right? From you or for me, right? To move forward when I'm just not, something's off, right? It's not, I don't feel like there's complete, not alignment in values. The values were there. It's just, I think we weren't lock in step. It wasn't easy, right? It wasn't smooth.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, so the person was a little bit obviously taken aback, but demonstrated so much grace, right? Almost immediately after, when we hung up and cried and the whole thing, it was like, ugh, it was so like good, but painful at the same time. Yeah. But from a place of love, right? And caring, right? And when I hung up, what you just said, the person texted me and said, maybe, just maybe, my role, right, as part of your circle was to pull that project out of the vault that's been sitting there for 4 years, right? And start getting it into motion because it's a great idea. And I'm like, and I said, thank you for, being so understanding and, and just sympathetic that I was suffering with the person too, right? But that's part of community too, to be able to have these raw, heartfelt, but just brutally honest conversations and just land on the other side of it, knowing that it didn't come from a place of ill will or ill intent, right?
Yeah.
And so, and from a purpose, something. And I love that you just said that because it kind of validates, right? This experience that I just had and what she actually told me, right? Perhaps I was the seed to get that, or the person that had to give you that nudge, right? To move on this particular project. And so anyway, so yeah, thank you for, sharing all of these insights, right? That are really, I think that really based a lot on your experiences, right? But also on your career path, right? And dealing with people, human resources, and just knowing across industries, and across executive levels and, work levels, if you will, right? Job levels too. What makes people tick, and what that looks like, because I think that really informed, how you so really amazingly put this together in such a succinct, practical.
It took time. It took time.
I can totally tell because this is a very deep, topic, and so layered, like you said before. So then to be able to put it in a format that is practical, it's a quick read, but not quick in the sense that if you actually use it, right? Like I've started to, and filling in, right, the blanks, it's an exercise on how you're building that community, where you're investing your time, energy, and resources, right? And your care, right? Your how you care about people and show up for people. And not that it's a tit for tat, it's just that it has to have purpose and meaning too, right? You want to make sure that it's deep and profound and fulfilling,
I've learned that I'm a person that is I laugh because I hear a lot of Priscilla. I'm always like, oh, Priscilla, people want to help you. Like they do. And I'm the type where I'm like, I'm going to figure it out. I'll figure it out. And now I'm learning, no, people, you got to let people help you. You can't do it by yourself, especially when you got, a 7-month-old crying their eyes out and want to stay clinging to you for everything. Right. And so I'm learning more and more how much it is a gift for people to help you. And that's what I'm trying to embrace more now in this phase of my life, where whether it's with Amalia and my daughter, my husband, whether it's in my business, whether it's but I've built over years who is in this community of mine now, right? And I'm still going to meet many more other people now in this new phase of my life. And again, I'm learning that it just, this whole thing of community crosses over not just career, but also personal. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, I learned it the most over the last 2 years with trying to have my daughter and seeing how I had folks from all parts of my life in different communities be there for me in ways that I could never have imagined, sending me notes and messages and random gifts in the mail and just, hey, I'm thinking of you, texting you because I'm randomly thinking, and I'm going, wow. So when I say success, I was like, that was for me. It felt like success because I have people that actually care about me and love me and want to see the best in me. And they know I'm having a hard time and they're there to help pick me up. And that, I hope, and that's why I dedicate it to my daughter. I'm going to tear up because my hope is that nobody ever feels alone. Because it's hard when you feel alone. And I hope that she never feels alone and everyone that's reading it, which is why I wrote it. Because again, the world has become so lonely even more heightened after the pandemic and with social media. And so my hope again is that we each find not just ourselves, but how we can flourish of who we are based on who we bring around us. And, I that is truly my hope that we each find those communities because they're also lifelines sometimes. Just like we give, it's also a lifeline to us.
This was so great, Priscilla. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll have you back for sure.
Thank you so much.
Just continue to be, that light because you're really, I've seen it in person, right? Every time we're at events and stuff, and normally it's because I have to travel or you have to travel, right? But we bump into each other and it's palpable, right? When you walk into a room that people notice, that you're coming in fully and with joy and always with a heart to give. So thank you. And I appreciate you being part of my community too.
And Priscilla, I'm going to ask this both selfishly and selflessly for our audience. Where can we pick up your book?
Oh, thank you, Chris. Anyone can pick it up on Amazon. If you just search Community by Priscilla Guasso, or you just search my name, you'll see our community book and then other fun books that are there too.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to pick it up. I don't know, honestly, personally, anybody that isn't seeking a deeper level of community. It is so important and so core to just who we are as humans. And so thank you for writing the book, for coming on and sharing your story. And your daughter is very lucky to have a mother who is on this path. So, and building a community for her.
Thank you.
So thank you for joining us again.
Oh no, thank you guys. I can't wait. It's you what you're building here is beautiful, and just reading and hearing what you guys have already done and the years that you've already been doing this, it's honestly really is an honor to be here with you all. So thank you for inviting me.
And that wraps up another insightful episode of Issues to Impact on the I Have Something to Say podcast. I hope you found our discussion today both valuable and inspiring. Remember, at Issues to Impact, we're dedicated to turning challenges into opportunities and supporting you and making a real difference in your community. If you have a challenge you're facing, we invite you to be a guest on our show. Reach out to us and let us be your expert sounding board. Together, we can find solutions and drive meaningful change. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. Follow us on social media and join our community of passionate changemakers. Stay connected, stay inspired, and let's continue to make an impact, tackling one issue at a time. Thank you for listening.